So good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon, Ed. Good afternoon. So for everyone, I wanted to know that Ed is my former colleague. Okay, we both worked in a BPO company for this pandemic, isn't it? Happening at Wonders Corporation. He's my senior manager and I'm his director for IT operations. So we went together before. And right now, I'm very glad and very happy that he's with me again, doing an interview. Once again, hey. Okay, so Ed, are you ready? Let's do it. Alright. So I have here my own coding over my set of questions, right? So number one questions, okay? Do you think what are the laws or national frameworks are most urgently needed for now, okay, to enhance and enforce cybersecurity across industries here in the Philippines?
So, you've known me very well. I have very high standards in terms of frameworks and compliance. I think one of the most important frameworks that the government has that needs improvement would be the National Cybersecurity Plan of 2024. Is there someone from the DICT here? I hope I do not get any indebted. So, what I have noticed is that I have read the document, like I know it like the back of my hands. And what I have noticed is that most of the standards and frameworks that have been used to create that documents are actually outdated. Particularly on the ISO 27001 side, they have used the 2013 version, wherein it actually has 110 controls. But on the newer version, which is ISO 27001-2022, it only has 93 controls. And it's much more consolidated in a way that it's categorized in a way that we can implement it much easier compared to the other version. Another thing that I have noticed is that the NIST version that was used was actually version 1.1. For me, it would be much better for us to use the updated version, which has the govern framework on adding to the other 5 frameworks or a core of NIST. But the most noticeable part about that document is that Zero Trust is only mentioned in that document 3 times. And the other one, it was even in the part wherein it was used as a reference. With our current situation, cyber threats are growing. They're now using AI. It seems like we need to revise that one, wherein it's more inclined going to the roadmap of Zero Trust. That means it needs to have, or it needs to define what are the required technologies for the 5 cores, which is the user and identity, devices, network, app and workloads, and data. So that's what's actually, hopefully, it would be revised soon. Because I have compared that same document to the national cybersecurity and the other cybersecurity plan of other countries, which is much shorter, much better to understand, and most of all, it's something that's implementable compared to what we have currently.
Okay, so we're talking about cybersecurity framework. So can you right now, I believe that all private company do have or already created their own cybersecurity framework aligned with NIST. Do you think that our government needs to impose only one cybersecurity framework aligned with NIST and only one body will do it and impose to all government institutions?
That's a very good question. I was actually expecting that one in the National Cybersecurity Plan document, wherein it would be the DICT who would actually push for other government agencies to implement NIST as part of their baseline cybersecurity posture. Unfortunately, it's not happening at all right now. That's what I have noticed. Another thing is that the plan itself needs to define the roadmap from NIST going to ISO 27001 going to Zero Trust. We need that type of roadmap in order for us to see the maturity level of our cybersecurity posture. So that's what I think the government should look into. And we should also adapt the strategies. Like for example, the National Institute of Standards and Technologies actually has their Center of Excellence for Cybersecurity, wherein that agency alone is actually in charge of what are the standards and frameworks that needs to be implemented across the different agencies in the United States. And from what it seems, at the same time, they are also the cybersecurity team of the National Institute, the NIST, is also the one responsible reviewing the ethical standards of AI across the different agencies in the US. So I think we need to adapt that one as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Ed. The second question is, we're talking about Zero Trust, okay? So can you tell us about the Zero Trust architecture and how important it is if we're going to implement it to every company and each government institutions?
Okay, when we talk about Zero Trust, we need to focus on what is Zero Trust. Actually, most of the people, organization, think Zero Trust is something complicated, a complicated part of information security. But actually, Zero Trust is actually the digital transformation of cybersecurity. That transformation alone should be the first priority of organizations in order to protect their critical assets, including protection of their data. Now, if we're going to implement Zero Trust, we still need to go through a series of what they call old or I would say the first type of security that we have. We still need to have the firewalls, IDS. Zero Trust will come in once we've established a better baseline or a mature baseline based on NIST CSF and ISO 27001. Now, Zero Trust will come in once there's maturity in our cybersecurity posture. Then we can map up the roadmap for user and identity, devices, network, application and workloads and data. But we also need to look into the capability pillars. So the first point that I have mentioned is actually the core pillars. The capability pillars includes visibility and analytics, orchestration and automation, and the most important of all is governance. So that will follow as soon as we map the roadmap or the 5 core pillars.
Okay, thank you, Ed. So do you think that Zero Trust should be integrated on cybersecurity framework?
Yes, actually, if we're going to look at the design, just in the NIST alone, once we have reached Tier 4, that's the time wherein we can integrate Zero Trust to move forward to what we call cybersecurity advancement. So, in DOSD, I actually, there's a difference between cybersecurity improvement and cybersecurity advancement. That's the framework that I have been pushing in the USD. So, cybersecurity improvements are actually the one that we're trying to improve on our current baseline right now. Now, once we're done with that, that's the time wherein we can go to the next step which is the cybersecurity advancement. That's where Zero Trust comes in.
Okay, thank you. So I have a question here. So, what role does cybersecurity play in enhancing customer trust and regulatory compliance?
Oh, regulatory compliance. That's actually one of the core objectives of Zero Trust. In terms of complying with the laws of the country and other countries as well, Zero Trust is pretty much dependable in protecting our private data. This is why it's much more compatible if it's integrated to data privacy laws, including the GDPR.
Okay, so other questions. How can companies build a future-ready cybersecurity workforce? And what skills initiatives are providing effectively?
Okay, that's a very good question. To tell you the truth, that's actually what we're missing right now in terms of workforce in the cybersecurity layer of our government. So just on DOST alone, we are actually looking into a lot of cybersecurity people, or not even cybersecurity people, those people who would like to go into cybersecurity. The problem is the workforce is not enough. And another problem is that the upskilling and trainings that are being provided is actually more on the basic part. There are no advanced cybersecurity training yet on our government side. So that's actually a big challenge. Hopefully, there's something that we can do about it.
Yeah, I believe that you're right. So, even my own observation, I direct I think some government institutions that take it seriously when it comes to cybersecurity. Okay? So if you can check some institutions, they don't have DPO and CISO yet. Okay? On their part. But they're pushing the private company that we should comply for the CISO and DPO in every each company. So I think for that thing, for the government, I think the problem is like how they can push cybersecurity in the government, because most of the relationship, okay, relationship government institution, they take the position with word passer, usually word passer, like accountant, engineering. But cybersecurity, if you graduated for BSIT, Bachelor of Science, Information Technology, Bachelor of Science, Computer Science, Bachelor of Science, Computer Engineering, they don't have a credit stamp. So how can we get that position? And then how can we push cybersecurity going down to each year? So that's the one problem there that we have.
Yeah, I'll add another thing regarding that. What I have also noticed is that most of the people who are actually going through cybersecurity, there's a tend to change their mind in the middle of their career. So if they find cybersecurity quite confusing, then chances are they will give up. So that's another problem.
Okay. So then, what is the business case for cybersecurity? How can CIOs, CISOs positions it is a strategic investment to senior leadership? How can you approach that?
Based on my own experience, we can build the business case for cybersecurity improvement if we can justify Zero Trust. So, if in case there's a kind of failure in terms of justifying it, then we really need to look into a much deeper solution, wherein we can adopt Zero Trust in a granular way, or gradually. Because the benefits of Zero Trust are actually quite extreme compared to the previous type of cybersecurity that we had. So it's like it's a must.
Yeah.
It's no longer an option.
Yeah, agree. And also, on my own experience, yeah, so actually, the problem with CIO, CTO, vice president, and the manager, whenever you're putting, okay, a PNL budget for the cybersecurity, for the information security, we're having also a hard time of getting their approval. So am I right? All of you having an issue in getting approval on all the equipment and all the things that you're getting from them. So what I did on my part, just sharing with you is, I always explain them the risk. What will be the risk if we don't have this? What will be the risk and outcome if we don't have this? Just tell them what will be the implication and the results of the risk if we don't have those equipment and those cybersecurity tools in our company. Okay? We need to prove it them, then I guarantee not only 100%, but that part, I think we can get their approval for the action. Okay? Okay.
I would like to add one thing on that. On top of that. I used to report to the CEO before, like 10 years ago. And what I have noticed is that CEOs are actually expecting us, the CIO, the CIO, the C-level IT people, they're expecting the layman's term type of explanation in order for us to justify the need for information security. So I remember last time, actually that's one of the things that IT is medyo mahina tayo dun. So one of the things that I did last time was actually I presented information security. But what I used was security controls. And I compared security controls to cars brake. So the question that I raised was, how fast would you drive if your car doesn't have any brakes? So tendency is you're going to an accident, regardless of how fast or how slow you go. So that's the same in information security. Without proper controls, you cannot drive your business fast or slow. So that's when I was able to get approval for my cybersecurity program.
Okay, all right, then. Thank you so much. Okay, so another question set for you. So how effective right now the AI-powered threat detection systems in proactively identifying and neutralizing cyber threats?
That's a good question. I actually work with different firewall suppliers or vendors that are actually proposing to us cybersecurity solutions. And the common denominator for using AI is actually to solve the problem of zero-day vulnerability. So that's their main goal.
Okay, so good answer. And so, again, in what ways can generative AI gen, be used to reinforce data protection and real-time monitoring?
Okay, so Jenna, I'm actually not that into AI in terms of using it. So I'm more into the middle part of AI. So yes, we can use Gen AI, but it still needs governance and monitoring in terms of its ethical use. For the reason that at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is to protect our data. And yeah, using AI is good, but there's always a risk. But if we have those controls or what they call governance, AI governance tools and policies, at the end of the day, we're going to feel safe using AI.
I agree, and again, on my opinion, I want to share to you that I believe that every one of us really wants to use AI already. Okay, even myself in our company. But again, we should be governed. Okay, this is really part of IT governance. That being in the information security. Okay, we need to understand how AI works and how can we manage it. Okay? Okay, for my sharing opinion, I believe that one of your security information security engineer should possess a category of he knows the number one is the 27001 of 2022, that's ISMS. He also knows COVID, and number three, he should know that CRISC or the Certified Police Informations, okay? Security controls, which is, I believe that you can manage AI and you can administer AI. Because some AI, like, I don't know if someone's using AI during meeting, okay? During meeting, we have AI applications that automatically AI used to get all the minutes of meeting. But sometimes AI automatically send it on the email list, and some email lists or email recipient set intended to have it. So you need to be governed, okay? Create a controls regarding AI applications that you're using, and make sure that the information should always check and balance everything.
And to that, it's good that you mentioned check and balance. Another framework that's actually out now, released by the National Institute of Standards and Technologies was the AI risk framework. So it's a framework wherein we can actually assess the use of Gen AI. So another standard that we can use as reference is actually the ISO 42001:2022. So it is based on the AIEU Act, wherein they identify AI into 4 categories of risk: low risk, medium risk, high risk, and prohibited. So if you have a chance to look into those details, then that would be wonderful. I'm actually looking into it right now as one of the contributors in the development of the AI governance and ethics legislation. So hopefully, I will not participate. No, joke.
Okay, then, so everyone has so what are the key KPIs or metrics that helps assess cybersecurity ROI and effectiveness in a company?
That's a very good question. There are a couple of metrics out there. For NIST, we're actually using the PPT, People Process Technology Framework, as to measure their maturity. So it's from level 1 to level 5. 5 being the optimized one. Then there's also different tiers in NIST that we can use. We can also use the CMMI, or I don't know if I got it correctly, but it's the Capability Mature Model. We can also use that one to measure our cybersecurity posture. While on Zero Trust, it has its own model, or it has its own maturity model from 1 to 4. So that is also defined in their 4 pillars.
Okay, thank you, Ed. So, by the way, to all the guests, I want to share you there's a actually I shared with my focus on my table. So currently to be aware, okay, to all the CISO here or information security, there's a new mobile scamming scheme, okay? So just wanted to share to you and share it to your employee also. Last Saturday, this is my own experience, I received a call, okay? The voice of the caller is very professional. he told me he worked in a bank, okay? And he's part of the anti-fraud management team. And I'm very curious because he knows all my information. I don't know how he got my information. Telling me that you have an online mobile banking transaction. Okay. And he told me about the bank. I do have a mobile transaction at that bank. And he told me that I use it lately in betting in an online casino worth 350,000 pesos. And I was shocked. Okay. And he told me, but the good news is I hold it already. So he hold it already. Okay. I said, thank you. Finally, he told me that, can you check now your online banking application if your savings account is still intact. So, I opened it. And he told me that, right now, sir, I'm going to change your OTP. I'm going to send you on your mobile the OTP number, okay? I'm going to send an OTP. And the crucial part is that, can you send me the OTP that you received so that I can activate it on our application system? So that's the bad part, okay? So that's the bad part because if you're gonna give him the OTP, I assure you, he will get control of your mobile banking, okay, applications. And your money will be gone. So I told him that I made a mistake because I don't have a savings account on that bank. Then he just dropped the call. So there I can see that he used a prepaid mobile number. A bank will use their track line, okay? A bank employee will never use his personal phone, okay? So that's catch, okay? And also, never ever give an OTP number, okay? Or you will be, you will be lost, okay? This is sharing with you. So there's a new banking scamming scheme, okay? They're very professional when they call you. They make you believe that they're from the bank. And they know your personal information. So that's it. I just wanted to share with you, okay? And you can share it with your employees as well.
Yeah, I also just want to share something. Actually, I want to share how I got into cybersecurity. Yeah. So for almost 4 years in the IT industry, I really hate cybersecurity and information security. I'd rather choose IT operations. Then, what I have noticed is that even from the pandemic up to now, threats have been increasingly complicated, and there is much more threats compared to the previous years that I have or that I was working in information security. That's the time I decided that Surgeon and I work together in battling those cyber threats. So, what inspired me was, in one of the companies I was working, I have discovered that cybersecurity is actually being taught in elementary schools. And this is happening in some parts of the US, in Australia, New Zealand, as well as in India. So that actually inspired me to have cybersecurity as our advocacy. And in one of my theses in my masteral, that was actually the core subject of my thesis. And during my defense, my professor at that time actually suggested that we should get into a party list, the cybersecurity party list. And I was actually before, I was hesitant, but I'm going to tell you now. Because of our advocacy in cybersecurity, we're actually planning to be part of the cybersecurity party list on the 2028 elections. And that's actually what we're going to push, to have cybersecurity taught in elementary schools up to whatever level it is that it is needed. Because right now, it is not just a threat. It's for our safety as well.
Well, thank you, Ed. So, I agree on that one. And again, before we finish this one, I just wanted to share also with you that it is good that we conducted cybersecurity awareness training yearly to every employee. Because we believe that human is the first, okay, we are the first, okay, we are the first rank when it comes to eliminating cyber risks, okay? So we should conduct cybersecurity awareness training to each and everyone, okay? And again, thank you so much. And do we have any questions on the desk? Questions? So I believe no more questions, and I believe Ed, thank you so much. Okay, for this one.
If you don't have question, I'll be the one asking questions. If ever we run the cybersecurity party list in 2020, will you vote for us?
Thank you so much. Thank you. Ed. Thank you.